This is Target Score Weekly with Joey Slattery and Taylor Allen. Welcome to another edition of Target Score Somewhat Weekly. I'm Joey Slattery along with Taylor Allen. It's been a crazy few weeks for us both, Taylor. I'm settling into a new apartment. I don't know if you can hear that dog barking behind me, but getting used to my new surroundings here and living in boxes. But there was some big news today, so we said there's no excuses. We have to make this happen with championship weekend coming to Winnipeg in 2025. And it's not just going to be a small one, Taylor. This is promised to be the biggest and best yet, coming from the commissioner's mouth during the presentation today.
Yeah, it's going to be a year of championship games in Winnipeg in 2025. We got the Grey Cup coming to town in November, and then, like you said, the CEBL Championship weekend coming in August of that year. So, yeah, it's going to be really cool to see. And, you know, they made the announcement today at the Canada Life Center, and Mike Morreale came into town. You know, the Premier Wab Canoe was there, the mayor, Scott Gillingham, was there, Jason Smith and David Asper, the Sea Bears, were there, obviously. So it was cool seeing what everyone had to say and just how excited everyone is to have this major event. But interesting to note, though, that in the press release, you know, and as they're speaking about this, they made no mention of whether or not Winnipeg, as the host team, will be guaranteed a spot at the 2025 weekend. So that was the first thing I asked Mike when I pulled him aside to say, hey, so are the Sea Bears, are they going to be guaranteed a spot in this Final Four? Because, you know, you look at the past 5 or whatever seasons it's been, the host team always is guaranteed a spot in that final weekend. So I asked Mike and he said, well, as of now, it's up in the air. So there's no guarantee for sure that the Sea Bears are going to be playing in that weekend. But either way, regardless who's playing, who isn't, I think the local basketball community is going to really embrace that weekend and just that celebration of Canadian basketball. So I think everyone's really excited, and rightfully so.
Which makes sense, too, because this is the earliest they've ever announced who was hosting championship weekend. Like the season hasn't even started on 24, and we're a few weeks out from training camp, and we're already talking 25 for championship weekend. And we had talked about this in the past, that this was kind of a formality, we felt, right? Like just having the provincial backing, the city's backing, that this was just a matter of time before it's approved and is coming to Winnipeg. So, you know, now that the cat's out of the bag, the excitement is, it seems to be gearing up. Even at the press conference today, there was a buzz. You know, there was a full media contingent there today, you know, interested to see what this meant and where this was going and what opportunities this is going to bring. You know, they talked about the economic impact this is going to have and everything else on the city. But, you know, to me, it kind of feels like the crowning, I guess, of Winnipeg or the Sea Bears basketball in Winnipeg. You know, we had the inaugural season last year. There's expectations this year, re-sign the MVP. And in 2025, you know that the championships game is coming here, regardless of whether, you know, the Sea Bears are in it. It's going to be the center of basketball in Canada for, you know, the weekend that is packed with things outside of basketball too, right? I mean, there's festivals that come with this, there's concerts, you know, there's basketball camps and tournaments and things like that. And of course, there's the Final Four as well of the, of the CEBL. So really exciting stuff. And this year it's in Montreal. I think my only not concern, but, you know, it's, I feel bad a little for Montreal because I feel like this is kind of overshadowing that there's the 24 one coming up. And I know there's a lot of excitement around that one too in Montreal, but there really seems to be a step up here for the Sea Bears hosting and having in Winnipeg, especially when you consider the experience that, you know, the executive office of the Sea Bears has when it comes to organizing big events like this, right? I mean, that, you know, these aren't people that are just willy-nilly putting this together for the first time ever. So I think that heightens the expectation, and that brought some confidence out of Mike Morreale as well, the commissioner.
You know, I've said before on this podcast that I really hope that the league will get to a point one day where the finals or even the championship weekend will be played in you know, in the backyard of the team that's actually like the number 1 seed or whatever, like having the finals played like the NBA finals. You know, it's not in you know, whatever host city, like the teams that are in the finals, that's where the finals are played. And just thinking, but then the more I think about it, though, I kind of think that maybe that's not the way to go. Like, it's kind of cool that this league seems really set on making this a big event and making it a celebration of basketball for Canada. Because, I mean, I was talking to Mike Morreale about it today. Other than the Raptors winning the the NBA title. What was it 2018?
2019.
2019. Yeah, there you go. Other than that moment, like there really hasn't been much for Canadian basketball fans to really celebrate, right? Especially on a yearly basis. So to have this event that you could have every year make its way around the country to different spots, it could, one day it'll take a while to get to the Grey Cups level, obviously, but you just look at the Grey Cup, right? Like the game itself is huge, but really it's all these events that happen throughout the week and all these people that go to that city. They don't even care who's playing in the game half the time. It's just all these different events and concerts that make it so much fun and celebrating the Canadian Football League. So I think this, we're still in the early stages of it. There's still a lot of improvements that need to be made. But I think kind of in the long run, I kind of like this vision almost, maybe even more so than having the finals in the location of the team that's actually in it, kind of thing. As crazy as that might sound.
I think the buzz, like today, we kind of got that first, look at it in person, I guess, right? The magnitude of, having the announcement at the, Scotiabank Premium Club, having it in the arena and kind of bringing out all the big guns, right? Like everybody that is somebody in the city, and makes things move here was in that building and was excited for it to come. When you have the premier talking about how excited he is to have this here, and obviously he's not going to say I don't want it here or anything like that, but there seemed to be a genuine kind of excitement of this and realization of the growth of basketball just in general in the country, but of course in the city too, right? I mean, they did take the time to discuss some of the initiatives that they've done, throughout since they've been here. But I think this is, I don't know if it ever has to get to the Grey Cup level, to be totally honest with you, in the sense that it's a little more intimate. I think that's what makes this league work, right? And we've talked about this before too. It's great that Winnipeg plays at the Canada Life Center and, the atmosphere's there. But, there are some other arenas across this league that it's not the Canada Life Center. Verdun Stadium being one where the 2024 game or championship weekend is going to be hosted. It's a lot more intimate, and that's what makes it fun too, right? So I think, in terms of the Grey Cup Festival, this is going to be its own version of it, and I don't know if it needs to be compared to the Grey Cup in any way, shape, or form, other than the fact that this is a Canadian version, a Canadian league of a game that is celebrated, outside of Canada as well, around the world. Like football being mostly North American, but basketball we're making it ours and having this championship weekend. So I'm really excited about it. I really hope the trophy makes it. As we found out during the live, I did have a live stream on my Instagram. So if you go at Joey Slattery TV, the post is there for the conference for anybody who cares to listen to it. But we found out the trophy wasn't there today. Not that the league didn't want the trophy there, but it's had some fun in the off season after the Scarborough Shooting Stars had won the championship. Apparently spending some time at Drake's house. And not necessarily coming back in the best of shape, but it will be ready to go for 2025, but preferably for 2024. But I'm thinking, Taylor, Mike Morreale was joking around about the trophies off-season adventures, but I want to see pictures. I want to see what I want to see pre-Drake trophy and post-Drake trophy. That I think we need this as part of the trophy history. The Stanley Cup's been stolen, and there's dents in that thing, right? There's a history to it. And Mike Morreale alluded to that. This is part of the story of the trophy, but like we need to document this. I think we might need to get an investigative feel here, an investigative role, and start digging out for these pictures.
Yeah, maybe it's missing some of the maple leaves that are on the trophy or what. I don't know how rough a shape it's in. I wish I kind of pressed Mike for some more details about that. But I thought it was funny what the mayor said. He said, hey, in 2025, if the Sea Bears win, we'll take this thing in 3 pieces, 4 pieces. We don't care what condition it is. We just wanted it in Winnipeg. So I thought that was kind of funny for him to add to that. But what I'm more intrigued to see, actually, Joey, is this new basketball court that the Sea Bears and Basketball Manitoba have purchased. And for those that don't know, I actually didn't know this either, that the court that the Sea Bears played on last summer was from the 1967, not 1999. I'm not messing this up. The 1967 Pan Am Games in Winnipeg. That's how old that court was. And I mean, to be fair, it's not like that court has been played on full time since 1967. And again, I mean, hardwood can last forever. Like you see homes that are 200 years old with still the original hardwood. But still, Just the thought that they were playing on a basketball court that was that old is kind of crazy. And actually, a fun fact for you, Joey, I did some research because I was so, fascinated by that. So I went back and looked at the 1967 Pan Am Games in Winnipeg. I was curious, like, what happened? Who even played? And the Americans won, as you would, kind of expect. And on that Team USA, they had JoJo White and
No.
Wes Unseld, which is kind of cool.
Whoa, that is cool. That
Yeah,
that
so
is so cool. I knew it was old. I did not know it was that. Like I was shocked when they revealed that as well. And I don't know. I remember being when I saw the court like come out and the players were testing it out for the first time. The visiting team that was for the opening game. That's the first thing they do, right? Is test for the dead spots, and it seemed to be okay, but there were a couple spots that they were eyeing out. And I'm sure the technology's come a long way in terms of the court too. But before I get on to that, the one thing I'll say, I just recently learned that apparently an older wooden house is actually stronger than the newer ones because of that. What you just said, the age of the wood that they had used back in the day was a lot stronger. And after 1980, they had to use, I guess, newer, younger wood. So it's actually easier for termites and stuff. So maybe that, I don't know if this new court will last the 60 years. I think it was Jason Smith, the president, that said, "Oh, we're going to see it for another 60 years." I'm like, I don't know, with this new wood, maybe not. But the other cool thing, this court, from my understanding, is coming. The new court that they're bringing in was actually one of the courts used during the women's NCAA championships as a practice court. So, like, we're getting a court that already has a little bit of legend to it already. Caitlin Clark. We don't know for sure, but Caitlin Clark may have hit a few threes and warmed up for her championship run at somewhere along the line in the Final Four, heading to the finals. So this is this court. If that all holds up, this court's coming with some star power as it is. So it's exciting times to be in Winnipeg, especially if you're a court lover. We're getting a new one.
I was talking to Chad Possumus about it, and he was saying how the old court, there was definitely some dead spots, like it was not ideal. So he said, "Yeah, we're welcoming this new thing with open arms." And I was mentioning that to him, that they like, yeah, this is coming from the women's Final Four, used as a practice court. Caitlin Clark, she probably stepped on this thing, and maybe they'll help you guys with your shooting touch. Who knows? And he said, "Yeah, that was one of our downfalls last year. We needed some better shooting, so maybe this will help us." So yeah, Chad is pretty stoked for this new court for sure. And yeah, it's going to get here this week, so they're going to be playing on it this season. It's not coming just for the 2025 championship weekend. So the Sea Bears will have this spanking brand new spanking court pretty soon here, which will be cool to see. And obviously they'll put their own decals and paint and all that good stuff on it. But yeah, because I know in the past, I think when that Canada-Nigerian exhibition game was in Winnipeg, I think they got a court from Grand Forks, or it might have been for one of the NBA exhibition games that they've had here. So they haven't always used that super old Pan Am Games court for all the basketball stuff at the Canada Life Center. They've had to borrow a court from Grand Forks and whatnot. So getting this court will be good for not only the Sea Bears, but I'd imagine for also too, like, getting more games like that, more NBA exhibition games, more Canada basketball games and whatnot, hosting national tournaments and whatever. So I think this court, I know we're kind of joking about it and whatever, but I think it's actually going to be a pretty big benefit to basketball in Manitoba moving forward. So it will be exciting to see. And I actually, maybe it was just the fact that we, when you watch the game from the first or second row or whatever, like the media bench, I did find like that old court, like it did sound like kind of loud, like even just like guys walking on it, you like, it kind of made some noises. I felt like maybe I'm overthinking it. I don't know. So it will be interesting to see what this new court is, if it's how much better it treats these guys. But yeah, that was cool to watch for everyone.
It will be huge for all of Manitoba, in terms of that it is in partnership with Basketball Manitoba, so they will have access to it when needed. And having now, I don't know for sure, but I imagine if the floor is still usable for the professional level just last year, you still have that floor for whatever else, right? If you've got to turn another facility into a court, not as big a, maybe not Canada Life Center, but if you're going to have some sort of cool event, the Manitoba Games or something like that, where you want to have more than a high school gym, because there's only a few university and colleges in this province, right? Where you can turn something maybe like the hockey arena or something like that into a little basketball rink in the summer or something or basketball court on the rink in the summer. So yeah, I think it is going to be it's going to be a huge help on a couple of fronts, having this new floor, but also having that other floor, for other things. Now we're getting a little technical with floor talk in Manitoba. But no, it's all exciting. This is going to be something, it kind of felt to me, this kicks off the buzz a little bit, to kind of have everybody back in, the media presence there, kind of a bit of a reminder that, hey man, the Sea Bears are coming back in just a few weeks before training camp starts up, and the season starts in 6 weeks. I don't know, what are we, the 9th? So yeah, month and a half until we're tipping off. And, the buzz is back, and we have some more signings that we're expecting to come out in the next week or so. And it sounds like it's going to be an exciting team. It's we've already have a few signings in the bank right now. I should apologize too. This is probably a good time to bring up that we've had some major technical issues, which has been a huge part to this podcast being delayed. You might notice there's probably a new logo with the software that we're using. So I apologize if you're hearing this again, but there's been a number of signings. We have Alex Campbell, Dave Mwencat, who was a human highlight reel. His YouTube stuff is really fun to watch, coming over from Scarborough. And we've talked about this, you and I, Taylor, even not on the podcast, just how even the Canadian contingent of this team makes it a strong, starting five with the people that we know are coming in, and we have some insight on that will likely be coming in. And that's all on top of Teddy Allen. So we're in for an exciting time in these next few weeks. Having an idea of what this team's going to look like. We're starting to see the other rosters take shape a little bit. And we're going to have some real basketball to talk about soon, which is really exciting. But I feel like this championship weekend just kind of got things into overdrive.
Yeah, and this Thursday's the CEBL U Sports Draft, which won't be too, exciting for the Sea Bears because we've been told they're going to take Simon Hildebrand, but still, it's a 3-round draft this year, so we'll see who they pick in round 2 and round 3. And then next week, it sounds like they're going to start announcing some more signings. So they've only really announced Canadian players so far, other than Teddy Allen. So
yeah,
we'll be finding out who these import guys are going to be pretty soon. And obviously, those are kind of the guys that can really make or break your team. So that'll be really interesting to see which guys they bring in. So,
well, I'll tell you this: I had one player that told me straight up that once the roster's out and the signings that are about to be made, that fans are going to be excited that this is going to be a very strong contingent, and there's that expectation of win now. But this player was saying that this is exciting. Wait, you're excited now. Wait till you see what this roster, when it takes form, what this roster is going to be made of, and just how much noise this team will be able to make. It feels like this team last year was, we hope they do well, but based on, the signings that have been made and what's coming down the pipe, I think there's going to be a bit more of that new expectation. We've talked about that this year, the expectation, but if the league gets out where, there's that consensus that this is the strongest team in the league, we know how Winnipeg fans are, right? When the team is good, the expectation is, we don't, when we know we're at a disadvantage, or we know that our team isn't at the strongest, it's like, well, we hope, right? We're rooting for you. Maybe we're going to give you that boost. And then there's that, hey man, like the Blue Bombers, we won a couple Grey Cups now. The expectation is Grey Cup or bust. And I think that's coming sooner than later here for the Sea Bears, especially when the hosting of the championships coming up a season from now.
Yeah, but with that said, there's still at least one more Canadian name to keep an eye on. And actually, I should say a Winnipegger's name to keep an eye on. And that's Jared Ogunbemi Jackson. If you guys haven't seen it yet, I sat down with him about a week or two ago now, and I did a story in the Winnipeg Free Press. And he played pro in Belarus last year. He's played pro for 9 years now, all overseas. He's had a fantastic career. He's 32 now, and he had the best year of his career in Belarus this past winter, but he left the team early. They were out of the playoff hunt. He wanted to come home, spend some time with his family, and just kind of rest up and whatever from all the wear and tear from such a long season. But with him being home early now, he's usually not home at this time of year. Like usually it's closer to the summer, if not in June and whatnot. With him being home early now, having some time off before the CEBL season, there's a legit chance that he could be added to the Sea Bears. And we've talked about these past couple episodes how the Sea Bears have greatly improved their Canadian talent. Well, I would argue Jared Ogunbemi Jackson might, if they did sign him, he would probably be their best Canadian player that they've ever had,
That's
and a
crazy.
Winnipeg product too. So
Yeah.
that's a name to monitor. And I was pressing him for details. Are you signing with the Sea Bears or not, or whatever? And he admitted like how exciting it would be, and how it wouldn't even be about money, just like the fact that after being away from home for years and years and years, getting the chance to play in front of his family and friends would mean the world to him. So I think there's a good chance it could happen. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into that, and where he ends up playing pro overseas for the upcoming fall winter season and stuff that could obviously throw a wrench into those plans.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the fact that he is home early right now, that definitely adds to the probability that there's a good chance he could be a Sea Bear, because last year, the Sea Bears, they wanted him bad. Like Mike Taylor was, he was recruiting him pretty hard and whatnot, but just didn't make sense for him to do it. So yeah, just another name to watch for Sea Bears fans and whatnot. Jared Ogunbemi Jackson, again, Winnipeg product. Would always be cool to see more Winnipeg guys on the team and whatnot. But yeah, if they could get him already to these guys that they've already added, I think this team is already better than the one they have last year. We don't even know the
Yeah.
imports they have, so that's pretty
Well,
scary.
that's it, right? So to recap, we've got David Wencat from Scarborough, Canadian talent. Shane Osiande returning, Canadian talent. You've got Mason Bercier, played with the Surge last year. And, if you haven't checked out that episode, that was a great podcast with him where he talked a lot about his journey from Trinity Western, into the CEBL and the stops that he's made and the excitement to play here. We've got, who else do we have? We've got Chad Posthumus.
He's back.
And
Simon's going to be back.
And especially, Chad, again, kind of the captain of this team and the guy that, has really been the, how would I put it, the ambassador of the team, year round. And he's balancing his 3-on-3 this year with an Olympic year. There's a chance he's going off to the Olympics with the qualifiers just around the corner, but that'll probably affect his time in terms of getting to training camp. I don't think anybody's upset with that when the Olympics are on the line, that's for sure. And he'll definitely be coming back in shape after playing that kind of basketball coming into the season. And then, of course, you've got Teddy Allen, right? And Teddy Allen is the straw that stirs the drink. That's where the excitement is for everybody. Everybody knows what he brings now, and it was interesting to note, I saw a few posts come out when UConn won the national title for a second straight year. The last time they lost in the tournament was the Teddy game. Right? So the that excitement there, and and I think that's a pretty good transition as we kind of go into the NCAA. I guess recap. We did plan to have an episode a week. That's where our issues have come up. So we apologize for that. But my bracket started great and then didn't do well in the middle, but I got the title match that I had anticipated. I wanted and thought Purdue was going to win. UConn won it. And it was entertaining for the first half. Second half, you really felt like UConn was just, they started chipping away at that lead and building that lead. And you just kind of felt like Purdue doesn't have an answer. Zach Edey played great. Foul shooting was a bit of an issue in that game, but it's just, UConn was, you're right. And you said this, you were sold on UConn's strength and their experience. And that proved to be a huge one in the men's one. But I do want to note the most exciting one for sure. And I think the more exciting tournament by far was the women's tournament. And I was
going to say, screw the men's tournament. We got to be talking about the women's tournament.
I
was
devastated.
The real main event.
I was devastated. The cool thing about the women's tournament and how it ended particularly was you had, in my opinion, the two best storylines that we're never, probably never going to get again. You got the undefeated team looking, to basically cement their legacy as a dynasty in the sport, going up against the best player, bar none, in the women's game. And I'm saying both WNBA and college. And I will go as far as saying the hottest name in basketball right now in Caitlin Clark. And, everybody's saying it's that championship. Even Dawn Staley said it, the head coach of USC, of South Carolina, she said the same thing. She's like, all I ever got was I was great, but I didn't win a championship. Caitlin needs to win that championship. And, I think not everybody, there are some haters out there, which always surprises me. I don't know how you can hate Caitlin Clark, but, that said it. Like, she needs to win this championship. I think everybody was hoping she win the championship, but man, that South Carolina team is strong. And I'll finish the thought with this. I love that Dawn Staley took, with the impact that Caitlin Clark had on the game, particularly this year, and the records that she broke, for basketball as a whole. We're not talking NCAA women's records, being the all-time leading scorer in NCAA history. I really appreciated that, she took the second to thank her for her contributions to the game, and shedding that spotlight on the opponent more than, you normally would. But I think it was well warranted in this case.
Well, this basically sums up the women's final. Iowa, they played 6 players. 6 players played meaningful minutes for Iowa.
Yeah.
That was
I don't think they had a single bench point either, eh?
Caitlin Clark played 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Played the whole game. Where South Carolina, they rolled with 9 deep. And I'm not talking like the 7, 8, 9 people, they just played 4 minutes. Like, they were playing substantial minutes. Like, they're making substitutions like every 5 minutes, like it's a WNBA kids game, right?
Yeah.
Like, they have a bench, they have depth, they don't have to run their star players into the ground to have to win a game like that, right? Where Iowa, you could kind of tell in those last couple of minutes that they kind of ran out of gas, right? There just was nothing left in the tank, and there's absolutely no shame in losing to a team like South Carolina that hasn't lost a game all year. And yes, of course, that's such the argument that we always hear in sports whenever there's a great player. It's like, yeah, but they didn't win a championship though. And it's like, well, what else could have Caitlin Clark seriously have done to win Iowa? Again, we're talking about Iowa here. We're not talking about
she carried
Tennessee or LSU. We're talking about Iowa, not exactly a basketball powerhouse. She has taken them to 2 national title games back to back. And honestly, even more important than the championship is what she's done for the sport, maybe as cheesy as it sounds and whatever. But you look at the ratings, you talk about the interest. I have people that aren't even basketball fans have been texting me saying how obsessed they are with this women's tournament, just all the cool storylines and whatnot. Like, it has taken the world by storm, and it is awesome. It's like, I've forgotten there even was a men's tournament half the time, because the women's tournament was just so much more exciting and whatnot, more stars, more action, whatever. And I mean, look at the numbers, right? Like, they had 18.7 million average viewers for that women's final. The most viewers that any basketball game, men's, women's, NBA, NCAA, whatever, most viewers that any game has had since 2019.
Crazy.
There's been some good NBA finals games these past couple years and whatnot, but that game got more viewers than all of them. Like, that's incredible, right? And it's just so cool seeing how far women's basketball has come, right? Like, you've heard over the years so many people make jokes about the WNBA and stuff, which is not cool, obviously. But look, like the women's game is hotter than ever. People are talking about it. People are loving it. And I'm really happy to hear that, right? And it's just cool to see because, I was doing some reading and stuff today on it. The Louisiana Tech, they won the very first women's NCAA championship in 1982. It took them 35 years to get a proper NCAA championship ring. 35 years, right?
Yeah.
Look out, like, so just think of that. Like, imagine winning the national title, not even getting a ring. And now look at where the game is now. Again, everyone's talking about it. We completely ignored Zach Edey and Purdue and UConn winning back-to-back. That hasn't been done since the Florida Gators dynasty, when that loaded team with all those NBA guys. It's like, who cares, right? Like, as like, no offense to them, it's like this woman's game is just seems so much more meaningful, and rightfully so. And I think that's so awesome for not just basketball, but just sports in general.
Right. And the other thing too, with the WNBA and stuff, like, I was reading on social media, people saying, like, my son was playing basketball and yelled Caitlin, like Kobe, taking a shot, right? Like from the whatever half court or from the logo. And, like everybody says, like, she's the female Steph Curry, which, I think is a great comparison in terms of, style of play in that sense, in terms of she's fearless of the shot and lets it go from anywhere, pretty consistently hits it too. But this is a pop culture moment. This is something we're like the Caitlin Clark year, right? Like, this is, we're all going to look back on. And I don't think this is a year they look back and be like, yeah, but she lost in the final. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to go water under the bridge so quickly. And the impact that she had, I don't even think for herself, like, clearly she's upset that she lost the national title, but you can tell in her face, even post game, that more was accomplished. And like you said, this was Iowa. This isn't a powerhouse school, and this isn't a tournament. Further to what you just brought up about the 1982 rings. Well, they only were able to use the March Madness branding last year. It was not called March Madness, the women's March Madness. It was the women's NCAA national championship. And then it was March Madness for the men and the Final Four and all this branding that they weren't able to use. And now they're using it. And she was the one that elevated it beyond the men's. And how many of the players, like I know Paige Bucher said it. There was a couple of other players that just kind of had that reflection of, that's crazy to me, that we outrated men's basketball and that we're the talk. And there's more stars in our side of the fence, on the women's side of the game. And it's awesome to see. And I honestly feel like, for the first time, the WNBA has been a long time and it was hard to find if there was a game on and you kind of knew you were watching the WNBA. You almost wanted to support it because you wanted that equality. This feels like it's not forced. This is just the sport. It's taking care of itself. And now we're not talking women's basketball. It's just basketball. And I love to see that, and I think that was another big thing that we'll look down in history when Caitlin Clark eclipsed I'm using eclipse on the eclipse week. Like we need to use that word again. But when she took over the all-time points, that to me is the one where we're going to look back at the moment it was all won because it wasn't for a woman. And we're not seeing, like everybody's embracing it for what it is. It's incredibly tough to do what she did. And now it's just the record. It's not for women and now you have to say Maravich's is for men. Right? Like he was the all-time leading scorer on the men's side. And I think that will be the one where we look at, okay, this is what brought it back to, even keel in terms of we're not drawing the line anymore. Now it's just another version of the game that we get to enjoy and not have to, defend or promote. It's taking care of itself now and people want to watch.
Some of the biggest names in women's basketball, we know it's been well documented that the WNBA doesn't pay what the NBA does, right? That's not breaking news. Yeah, at least not yet. But it's been but so many of the top players over the years, what they do is in their off season is they have to go play in Russia. Mm-hmm. I mean, that might change because of things that have obviously happened in the past year or two, but they would go play pro hoops in Russia and get treated so much better. Actually get to stay in like nice hotels, not sharing these like crummy Motel 6s and crammed on these buses and whatever, and actually get paid like good wages and whatnot. This is what like these pro women's basketball players have had to do for so many years. But now, again, with names like Caitlin Clark, love or hate her, it doesn't matter. Like if this leads to more success for the WNBA, where she's obviously going to be going next year, and that's a win for everyone in the entire sport. And I mentioned this to you the other day how I have a 5-year-old niece, and I just think it's so cool that growing up she's has people on TV that she can watch and say look up to and whatnot. Because I was, again, like I remember when I was a kid watching March Madness. I've said this all the time how it's been my favorite sporting event since day one, basically. That I didn't realize when I was a kid that there even was a women's tournament because it was never even on TV, never talked about, never got any publicity until maybe the finals. That would kind of pop up on TV. You're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. But you never knew that there was a Sweet 16, Elite 8, whatever for the women's side. And now those games are just getting just as much recognition. I think the game against Iowa LSU last year's rematch of the final and this year's Elite 8, I think they had 9 million viewers or something like that. So, or no, I think it was over 10 million viewers, whatever it was. They had a lot of viewers, and it's great now that this tournament is actually not just known, but it's like, again, talked about, embraced, and loved, and rightfully so. But I guess we should talk about the men's final too, because they're maybe no Caitlin Clark and South Carolina undefeated season, but Zach Edey, another polarizing figure in the game. A lot of people can't stand him just because he's this old school big guy and he gets fouled a bunch, and half the game you're just watching him take free throws. But I know they lost and whatnot, but give the guy some credit, because when's the last time a 7'4" Canadian kid has been a player of the year and led his team to the national title game? I'll tell you. And
after last year's disappointment, he was a player of the year last year too, and got knocked out. Was the first round, I think, last year?
16 seed. Yeah. So let's give the guy some flowers, because this doesn't happen every year, especially for a Canadian kid. I mean, he could be the greatest. I know he played his full, from freshman to senior, and lots of our best Canadian talent have only played 1 year or whatever. But You could say he's the best Canadian NCAA player of all time. So
Well, here's what I'll say about that, though. This is changing, right? Like we kind of went from the long time 4-year players that would spend a career at the college level to develop, and then we had the one and dones, right? When Calipari came into Kentucky, which ironically now he's going to Arkansas, but
yeah, weird
that's what
story.
really launched this whole one and done thing, and why we have those guys that had limited careers in college. Some of those guys playing for Kentucky, actually. So to see a guy go through it, I think we're going to see that normalized a little bit more with these nil opportunities. What is it? Name and likeness influence, whatever. Name, image, likeness. There it is. But this is something that we're going to see more and more of. And that is the point of college basketball. It's just like junior hockey. You're there to develop. It's not a race to get out of there. You're supposed to get out of there in your top peak shape to move on to the next level. It's just like college for anybody else. You go to learn your vocation at that level before you go off and put it into practice and make a living out of it, right? So I had no problems with him going back, and I don't buy that argument. He had another year, he had something to prove, and he went out and he did it. He didn't win the championship, but I do feel like you got there to the dance and you were competitive all the way through, and you were the focal point, right? Kind of like Caitlin Clark. No one's going to fault her for the loss, and I don't think we can fault Zach Edey for the loss either. And I do think I know the verdict is out there, but he's got the tools to be an NBA player. How good of an NBA player he's going to be, that remains to be seen, but I do think he's the number one pick. And if he gets into the right team with the right development, and he works with his frame and able to make himself maybe a little bit more mobile, man, this kid could be something in the NBA. And I'm excited to see it. And I know that even with DJ Burns with NC State, we talked about that before as well. Here's a guy that, man, he might go play football for all we know. But
he said no. He turned down those
okay.
rumors.
So he's a guy too, right? Like he might not pan out in the NBA. There are those dudes that have had NCAA great careers that just didn't pan out in the NBA for whatever reason. When it comes to Zach Edey, I think I take the bet on it. I think he's going to be a big impact player in the NBA if he doesn't get hurt and continues to develop. It just, I really hope he lands in a spot where that is taken into consideration. That's someone who knows how to work with a man that size, how to maximize his strengths, and use it in a way that not to disguise his weaknesses, but making sure that they can exploit those strengths and make him a full potential NBA player.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I totally disagree. I think he's not going to be a good NBA player, but that doesn't matter, because I think it's actually quite sad that instead of people celebrating Zach Edey and talking about how great he's been and how dominant he's been, just people are being negative. And it's like, oh, well, this kid isn't going to mount to anything in the NBA, so who cares that he's scoring 30 and 15 in the NCAA tournament? And it's like, whatever. Like DJ Burns isn't going to be an NBA player either. And every tournament, there's always these kids who pop off on their great story for a couple weeks and they don't make it to the NBA either. So why is Zach Edey this guy that just gets singled out, and so much negativity surrounding that guy, and which isn't warranted at all? And obviously losing to the 16 seed last year did not do him any favors. But this year when they won their Final Four game, he dunked on everyone literally, and he said like, man, everyone's talking crap and doubting me and whatever, and now here I am. So it's been cool seeing how far he's come. And I think us Canadians need to celebrate him a little more.
I also think too, part of what you said is part of the reason why I think he might actually have a decent career. Here's a guy who, most guys come out as a top player. There's some, a little bit of how would I put it, like swagger with it, right? Like people like, yeah, it's the number one player. Not a lot of guys come out being the number one guy 2 years in a row, and then all the doubts about what his career is going to be like. And seeing what he did with a chip on his shoulder this year, I'm really interested to see if he can bring that over to the next level, because I think this is what's fueling him. The underdog favorite. No matter what he does, there's going to be the naysayers. There's going to be the doubts. And I think if he can fuel that properly, or use that as fuel in a way that, allows him to be the best version of himself, like this guy's got a drive and a hunger. The fact that he was at Purdue, coming from Canada, being a number one player on that team, to a number one player in NCAA twice, and going to a final after a year where he was embarrassed, essentially, or his team was embarrassed in the opening round. I'm not writing this guy off. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, and in that men's final, it's kind of similar to the women's final with Caitlin Clark. I mean, What else could have Caitlin have done? Well, what else could have Zach Edey have done? I think Purdue hit what, one 3-pointer, and
Yeah.
he carried them on his back in that first half, and they were down 6 points or something like that going into halftime. Like, they were definitely within reach. And then the second half, UConn really figured it out defensively, really kind of shut down Edie, gave him some troubles, and no one else on Purdue stepped up. Literally no one. It
Yeah.
felt their entire offense was, let's bring the ball down the court, let's give the ball to Zach, and pray to God that he beats his man in the post and scores. And luckily, it does work, a decent amount of time. But UConn was gladly saying, hey, Zach Edey, yeah, he can score 30-plus points. That's okay. But the rest of you jabronis, you guys aren't scoring more than 10 points. They were glued to their guys on the outside. Like, no one was getting any three-point shots off or anything. It was just the Zach Edey show. And it just felt like Purdue did not have a second option. They didn't have a plan B. It was just putting all their chips in Zach Edey's basket. And yeah, that's going to work when you play a 10 seed, a 8 seed, even maybe a 5 or a 4 seed. But when you're playing UConn, the defending champions, a team that is blowing out teams by double digits, game after game after game, they did it their entire run. In last year's tournament, they did it their entire run. In this year's tournament, you got to throw some curveballs at them. You can't be so predictable. And Purdue was, and they paid for it. So I was tempted, honestly, to turn the game off with like 10 minutes left. Because it was just so obvious that there was no way UConn was going to lose. But I'm like, well, I've already devoted like 100 hours to this tournament.
Exactly.
What's another 20 minutes? So I sat through it and watched them cut down the net and the whole thing. But yeah, that was a game to forget, sadly. But UConn, again, they've been kind of lost in the shuffle with all the women's talk and the Zach Edey talk. But I mean,
you look at even the
fantastic story too.
Dan Hurley, right? The head coach of UConn from, what was it, back in 2020 when they got knocked out? That would have been the game, that would have been the Teddy game, right? Or was that? No, that would have been, what are we?
Yeah, that would have been Teddy game.
No, it would have been a little later that. But there was, I think it was 2020 where the clip was from, where he was saying, just watch, we're coming. Like, this isn't UConn basketball. And he's really turned it around to now, they're talking about him being maybe one of the greatest coaches when it's all said and done, and how he's been able to turn around this program with back-to-back championships. So, there's a guy getting his praise as, he's really cementing himself as like, the coach of UConn and one of the biggest coaches in the NCAA. But yeah, it was a little overshadowed. I don't think they care too much about that. I think it's all about winning. And like I said, these guys, the spotlight continues years after as well, right? When they go into the NBA, I think for the first time ever, we're going to see a record-breaking. I don't even know if the WNBA draft's ever been televised before. And now there's going to be more people knowing where she's going to your Indiana Fever in the first overall pick. Like, people are going to be tuning there to watch history, and I think that is really cool. And just like, we were talking about Zach Edey, Caitlin Clark's been getting the same deal. Like Taurasi was talking about, I think she was talking about all of the players coming in, like, because there's a crop of stars at the NCAA level. And she was saying, listen, you get to the WNBA, it's hard. You're playing against real pros. And people kind of took that, against a knock against Caitlin Clark. But there are people that say that, just because you were big in college doesn't mean it'll turn into a successful career in the WNBA. But I saw one sports head talk about it on Twitter where they said something along the lines of, people said the same things about LeBron James. And I think that's totally true, right? These kind of great players, nothing phases them, right? It hasn't phased them yet. She wanted to go to UConn. You talk about the storyline of the final. She had to beat the team that didn't even give her a sniff when she was trying to break into the NCAA, the only school she really wanted to go to. Then she stuck with the hometown team and gave it right back to them in the semifinal to get to the finals. Like, it's been such a great story, but I think I'm excited to watch her career. This has the potential to be the Michael Jordan, the WNBA's Michael Jordan when it's all said and done. And I really hope that health-wise she's good. I don't doubt in the skill whatsoever. I think this is something that's, don't want to say it's in the bag, but I think she's going to be a very, very impactful player and maybe the greatest of all time when it's said and done. So I really hope that this momentum carries, because it's going to be a huge year for women's basketball after this.
Yeah, it just goes to show just how important superstars are in sports, right? Like, the men's side is so suffering right now for superstars because, again, so many guys, they play their 1 year, then they're out, or they go to the G League, or they play in Australia for a league so they could get a paycheck. And yeah, you're right, that might change a little bit now with the NIL and whatnot, but or the men's tournament is suffering for it, right? Like you looked at this tournament as like, who are these guys that we're going to be really excited to watch in the NBA? Like, yeah, UConn has a couple of guys that are going to get picked, Stephon Castle, Donovan Clingan, and whatnot. But was there anyone that you watched in this NCAA tournament where you're like, oh my goodness, I cannot wait to watch that guy in the NBA?
Let's just say I didn't have Donovan Clingan's jersey in the shop cart, while watching the game yesterday, if that makes
There you
sense.
go.
Like, he's
And
not
he's
there
great.
yet, right?
But
yeah,
yeah,
I agree with you.
so
I think that made it perfect timing. It was not a great year for NCAA men's basketball, and it was a phenomenal year for the women's game, and it showed. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. What did you say? 18.7 million viewers? That's insane for any sporting event. I don't care if it's the NBA Finals, the Super Bowl, the Grey Cup, women's basketball, men's basketball. That is impressive. And to take that load of pressure and, that you're carrying the torch of the game as a young adult in college, I wasn't that mature in college to be able to handle any kind of pressure like that. I'm still not sure I could if it were put upon me, and I really hope I don't have to worry about that. But she's done a phenomenal job, and that's why I have all the belief in the world, and I'm rooting for her. Like, I really hope she pans out to be the greatest of all time.
And I have something here for the hockey crowd. Here, just give me 1 second here. Last year's NCAA Women's Basketball Championship game drew 9.9 million viewers, approximately triple the viewership of the Stanley Cup Finals. So this year's, let's do the math here. So this year's tournament drew 18.7, the women's final. So that is what, 6 times the Stanley Cup Finals? Like, that is...
I ain't getting into math, but it's a lot.
It's something like that. It's a lot more. Yeah, I'm a writer. I don't do numbers, but yeah, just put it, like, just think of it in that way, because the number 18.7 is like, well, what does that really mean? What does that compare to? Well, that is around 6 times what the Stanley Cup Finals gets. So that's damn impressive, man.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. One of the things I'm excited to see is what names of those men's tournament we're going to be seeing in the CEBL. Like, that's one of the cool things, I think, in the last couple of years watching this tournament, knowing that this is an avenue for a lot of those guys, and how competitive it is to get in the CEBL because of the limit on Americans that you could have on the team. So, it'll be interesting to see, like, what are these big names that came out that are going to pop up in, Winnipeg or Vancouver or Montreal or somewhere, trying to get on their NBA path through the CEBL, especially as it gains notoriety. So that was my big thing too. I'm excited to see, like, are there going to be names that we recognize? Are there going to be names that we don't, right? That's the other thing too, that we're going to look up and be like, oh man, that guy played on, whatever, Florida Atlantic. That's super cool or whatever. But that's what I'm looking forward to as well. But no, it was a successful tournament. All this tournament talk, I think the timing was great for this announcement, because we're talking about a big tournament coming to Winnipeg in 2025 in the CEBL Championship tournament, which is a lot of fun as well. And that Winnipeg's going to show out. I had some colleagues around the league reaching out, just saying, like, I'm coming to this one, even if I'm not working, I'm coming. This is one that I think everybody's got a big expectation for. Winnipeg fans have a lot, can take the credit for that. The ownership and management of the team, with their background in building Grey Cups and Juno Awards and all these other big events. And it's a Grey Cup year. I don't think this is a team that wants to be overshadowed by the Grey Cup either. I think this is going to be a tone-setting tournament, and you're going to want to be in Winnipeg in 2025. I mean, this is going to be the city of champions regardless, because there's going to be a couple of major Canadian championships being awarded here that we know for sure. And I know there's a lot of fans that hope it's going to be the home team in both, because it'd be something if you had the Winnipeg sweep of the 2 Winnipeg teams winning the biggest title of their sport in Canada on home soil. That doesn't happen often. So, pressure's already building here, and we haven't even started the CFL or CEBL season. We're already talking about 2025, but that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing in terms of excitement, though.
Yeah. But just one more thing on NCAA basketball. And I swear I don't use this podcast just to promote whatever I write. So I apologize. I usually try to keep it to one story an episode.
Get on your soapbox. We don't need the justification.
No.
Get on the soapbox, Taylor.
But I just wanted to add, because some people might find this interesting. So this past NCAA season, there was only one Manitoban who was playing Division I hoops. And that was Kyler Filowich, playing at Wofford in his junior year. And I spoke to him the other week. He has one more year left at Wofford. He's hoping to make his NCAA tournament debut after playing his first 2 years at Southern Illinois, I believe, and now he's been at Wofford for 1 or 2 years. So he's really itching to make it to the NCAA tournament. But anyways, talking to him, he had a career year. He averaged, I think, around 9 points, 8 boards, something like that, like close to a double-double. Had a really strong year. And I was talking to him about, after not looking too far ahead, not trying to get past your senior year that you're building towards, but what are you thinking after that? Like, are you hoping to play pro basketball? And he said, yeah. And he said, honestly, last summer I was in Winnipeg. I was watching the Sea Bears, and I just couldn't help but think like how cool that would be to one day play in that league and, maybe even play for the Sea Bears and whatnot. So this is down the pipe here, but another local name to maybe keep an eye on is Kyler Filowich, the former big man from Vincent Massey Collegiate. He obviously expressed how cool it'd be to play for the Sea Bears one day, and
Yeah,
that'd be a big
brother
pickup.
of I think two-time U Sports Player of the Year, Keelan Filowich in the
Yes,
women's game,
that's
who
right.
was out at UBC and finished her career at the University of Winnipeg, and just came short of winning a national title with Winnipeg a couple of years back. But yeah, big basketball family in the Filowiches, and I know a city would love to see another local guy, make it here, and that's another thing when you can see it. Think of his excitement. Now think of all the kids that are there every game that are watching that know that they can devote their childhood and development, with a dream of even playing at home. That is as kind of like the CFL, right? Yeah, NFL is great, but if I could play for the Bombers, like that dream is going to be with the Sea Bears, and that's really cool to see as well. So a lot of excitement in the, we're going to look ahead to this year. We've got a few coming up the pipe in the next few weeks as we gear up towards training camp. We apologize for the what we call it, irregularity of our releases. A lot of it wasn't really in our court here, and hopefully we fixed the bugs that have been hampering us a little bit, but we're excited to get back on track here. I have to get my life out of boxes right now and get settled in my new place. So maybe this is a good time to wrap up. And maybe by next time, Taylor, I'll have another place to record my podcast other than the kitchen table.
You know what? I've been on a lot of Zoom calls for this job these past couple of years, and I've seen some pretty bad, set up some bad backgrounds and whatnot. So your kitchen table, the hallway behind you, not too bad. I've seen worse. I see you got the smoke alarm there. So
smoke alarm, yeah.
Safety first. So.
And we got a sprinkler, so I'm safe. Maybe this is where I need to be. We're in the safety zone.
There you go. I like it.
All right, Tay. A lot of fun as always. Talk to you soon, buddy.
You bet, man. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Target Score Weekly Podcast. To stay up to date with Winnipeg Sea Bears and CEBL news, as well as future episode releases, follow Joey and Taylor on Twitter and Instagram at TaylorAllen31 and at Joey Slattery TV. And wherever you're getting the podcast, be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode.